Gilbert Darisse was a unique individual and exceptional musician. He left his mark not only on his family, but also on Quebec City and the whole province of Quebec. During his brilliant career, he would perform in front of prime ministers and heads of state, historic figures such as Franklin Roosevelt and Winston Churchill, as well as kings and queens of England. However, he would never forget his roots in St-André de Kamouraska. In fact, his final resting place would be in the cemetery of that village in 1996. What follows is a brief testimonial which provides an overview of his family background and the contribution he made to the musical heritage of Quebec. Gilbert Darisse was born in St-André de Kamouraska on October 28, 1909. He was the second child of Alexis Darisse and Eva Zoé Desjardins, and the grandson of the renowned local industrialist Charles-Alfred Roy de Desjardins and Émilie Dumont, as well as Théophile Darisse and Desneiges Paré. Alexis and Eva's oldest child was his sister Carmel. 4 younger brothers would follow: Alexandre, Léonard, Paul, and Henry. Gilbert began to take violin lessons at 4 years old, using an instrument which his mother had bought him from the Hudson's Bay Company. Young Gilbert would learn his lessons so fast and so well that the following year, when he was only 5 years old, he was asked to play a solo at midnight mass in St-André's church. The warm applause and congratulations he received encouraged him to pursue his studies and dream of a career in music. He studied at various Quebec schools, including as a boarder at the Saint-André Convent, at Saint-Louis de Gonzague, and at the Petit Séminaire de Québec. However, he contracted pleurisy, and his doctor recommended that he find somewhere to live which had a milder climate so that he could heal faster. By pure luck, his mother had a cousin who lived in Rochester, New York. So, at the age of 18, Gilbert moved to Rochester. He took English language lessons for immigrants, and the following year, he registered at the University of Rochester. It was here at the prestigious Eastman School of Music that he pursued his studies in music and met the love of his life, Dorothy Cooney. They both graduated with Bachelors of Music in 1932. Gilbert had always intended to return to Quebec. That is exactly what he did in 1932. His first job was violinist in a dance band at the Victoria Hotel. He would have a fulfilling career in Quebec not only in popular music, but also in classical music. In 1934, he would be asked to join the Quebec Symphony Orchestra. He accepted the offer and performed as its first violin for the next 27 years. It was in this position that he made a name for himself as a great classical violinist. When the orchestra was later made a permanent organization and the number of concerts, including matinees for children, increased significantly, he was asked to take on the responsibility of manager for the orchestra, a task he would perform with enthusiasm and great skill. Given the burden of his new responsibilities, he gave up his role as the first violin. Nevertheless, he would continue to play in the orchestra in the first violin section. During his term as manager, the orchestra received a substantial subsidy from the government aimed at promoting classical music appreciation beyond the walls of the old capital city and making it more readily available to the various regions of the province of Quebec. As the orchestra's manager, Gilbert gave his heart and soul to this mission. This required Gilbert to establish a whole new network of reliable collaborators throughout the province in towns such as Rivière-du-Loup, Rimouski, Trois-Rivières, Thetford Mines, Baie-Saint-Paul, and Saguenay, to name only a few. He would visit these towns one by one, to identify the best possible sites for concerts, to set dates for concerts, and even to measure the width and depth of the local stages. All of this was hard but useful work, since the regional concert program turned out to be a smashing success. Keenly aware that the life of a musician can be very precarious, early in his career he accepted a permanent job as a professor at the Quebec Conservatory. Among the many students he would mentor during the 27 years he taught at the conservatory would be great Quebec musicians such as violinist Jean-Louis Rousseau and François Magnan. Such would be his impact as a professor that his picture still hangs today in the corridors of the conservatory, now situated at the Grand Théâtre de Québec. Violinist in a dance band, professor at the conservatory, first violin in the Quebec Symphony Orchestra. Those are all activities that would keep any normal professional musician busy on a full-time basis. However, Gilbert had exceptional talent and almost inexhaustible energy. He was, in short, a force of nature. Therefore, in addition to all these activities, Gilbert found the time to pursue a career in radio. During 22 years, he directed weekly radio shows, one at the radio station CHRC and the other at Radio-Canada. In fact, his orchestra provided the music used for the opening of Radio-Canada's station in Quebec City. At CHRC, he would direct a show entitled Ici l'on chante, Here We Sing. This show promoted Quebec singers and Quebec popular music. For example, the father of Sylvain Lelièvre, a star of Quebec music several decades later, found a special place on that show for his original compositions. His Radio-Canada program, Variété, Variety, would be broadcast nationally from coast to coast. Not only did he direct the program, but each week he prepared the orchestrations for the 25 musicians in his orchestra. Over the years, this program would feature most of the popular Quebec singers of that time. Furthermore, Gilbert had, as announcers, two men who would later become great figures in the political and cultural history of Quebec, none other than René Lévesque and Félix Leclerc. In 1934, he was invited to join the dance band at the Grand Hotel, the Château Frontenac. 2 years later, upon the retirement of the orchestra's leader, he would be asked to replace him and to take over as band leader, something he would do brilliantly. He also joined a quartet that played 18th century music to the delight of the hotel's guests at teas and suppers. However, it was as the dance band's leader that he would manage to carve out an increasingly important place for himself in popular music circles in Quebec. His orchestra performed in front of heads of government and heads of state during official events. Furthermore, during a certain period, the Prime Minister of Quebec, Maurice Duplessis, had his residence at the Château Frontenac. He liked Gilbert and his music and would invite him from time to time to join him at his table for a bite to eat during intermissions. Gilbert's reputation as orchestra leader was such that the filmmaker and director Gilles Carle asked him to come out of retirement in the early 80s to appear in his great film Les Ploufs, based on a novel by Roger Lemelin. Mr. Lemelin, one of Quebec City's greatest writers, often danced with his wife at the Château Frontenac and insisted that Gilbert have a role in the film. And what role did he play in the film? Well, that of a certain famous dance band leader at the Château Frontenac, none other than Gilbert Darisse. Though he received several awards during his retirement, such as the Medal of Honor from the French consulate, his experience during the film Les Ploufs was a crowning moment of his career.
while. Will you try to give one little thought to me? Though someone else may be nearer your heart.
Qu'est-ce que vous observez? Jean Collins?
Non, Singapour Sling. Essayez, c'est extraordinaire.
Très bien. 2 Singapour Sling. 2 Singapour Sling?
Vous allez voir, ça rend sentimental. On se sent bien, bien, bien. Ça donne envie de faire des choses.
Une liqueur orientale.
I know that I'll be contented with yesterday's memories, knowing you'll think of me once in a while.
During his retirement, Gilbert and his wife Dorothy spent several months each year in St-André at their cottage and on their island. Gilbert created dozens of original musical compositions, many of which were inspired by the beauty, the culture, and the soul of the Lower St. Lawrence.